please do enjoy this next little segment. This is our very special retrospective from our man Crofty. Enjoy.
Video game music has come a long way since the first generation of the game machines in the 70s. Join me as we look back at the evolution of video game music in this retrospective. First generation of physical devices, such as cassettes and tapes, were not very flexible because they only could generate 2 tones. Therefore, they were incredibly limited when it came to writing music or creating sound effects for games. The music also had to be programmed for the sound chip as well. For example, let's listen to the Atari 2600 version of Asteroids. Notice that there's actually only 2 sounds going on at any one time. In the early 80s, the Yamaha YM sound chips allowed for several tones, including frequency modulation, which allowed for more variation in tracks. Let's take a listen to Frogger. The Nintendo Entertainment System was released in the mid-80s, and it used the YM2612 Yamaha chip that had a postcode modulation channel that allowed for sampled sound. At this point, sound composition for games were greatly increased. Let's have a listen to Final Fantasy II. It wasn't until the release of the Mega Drive in the late 80s that the PCM chips really pushed. Let's have a listen to Sonic & Knuckles. Note the drum samples. The Super Nintendo took things further with a custom Sony sound chip allowing 8 tracks of samples, 16-bit resolution and audio effects. This allowed more flexibility to composers to write bigger scores. Let's have a listen to Chrono Trigger. The mid-90s saw a change from the cartridge solid-state memory to CDs that held more data and allowed for music to be streamed off the disc as one channel to 3 other channels for sound events in the game. The PlayStation had 24 channels for sound and it played at a CD quality. This extract is from Tomb Raider. Consoles in the early 2000s, such as the PlayStation 2 or the Xbox, introduced more channels and more effects. With bigger memory than the PlayStation 1, sounds could be buffered, allowing for dynamic compositions. Res, for example, allowed players to manipulate the composition in real time as they played the game. The introduction of bigger optical devices in the late 2000s allowed for bigger sample rates and clearer audio. Composers were able to create hugely dynamic cinematic scores to match cinematic games in the HD era. Mass Effect was an incredibly cinematic sci-fi opera, and the music tried to capture this. With video game music use in films, the performance of live video game music, and album sales, video game music is destined for more mainstream success. But the technical aspect of video game music has hit a ceiling. Until next time.